And lo and behold, we are actually on the air here at HMSnetradio.org. My name is Ray Hill. You're listening to Ray on the radio, and we are eclectically powered and multidimensional. And we are listened to only by the finest invited audiences in the world, and I'm glad we invited you because I can sit over here by the tote board and I can see we've got a little bit of audience, but it's not too late for you to call your friends and tell them there are two ways you can get here, hmsnetradio.org. If you want to add www ahead of that, that'll work out even better. Or you can just go to therayhill.com and follow the links, and you're here in a flash. It is Thursday, and as you well know, I like to have guests in the house on Thursday, and I have a young man with me today. His name is John McAdam. He was referred to me by a former guest on the radio show. If you'll remember, we had Doug Caddy in here talking about his trials and trails and tribulations at the hands of Washington, D.C. spooks, about which there have been books written. And he was a charming guest, and he said, you know, great little vehicle you got here, but you and I are not the only people with ideas. And he said he'd run into this young man and he'd invite him over. John, welcome. So you got to say something, so that don't nod your head. Just say something so we know you're here.
Howdy.
Howdy. John, tell us about yourself. How old are you?
I am 21.
21 years old, and what do you do?
I am still in high school. I go to a high school that has advanced years, so it doesn't end at 12, but it goes beyond, and we get college credits for that. And in my spare time, I like to think of myself as a researcher/writer.
Okay, now, is it called a challenge school?
Yes, sir. Challenge.
Where does that nomenclature come from?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, but you're a 21-year-old high school student, and some of your efforts there are gaining college credit hours.
For free. The school pays for it.
It's school pay. It's an operation of HISD, or?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And how long have you been there?
I've been there 5 years now.
Tell me about the courses you're taking.
Apart from taking the simple or not so simple AP classes, because high school classes, because it is an advanced high school, I also have to take college classes at HCC, and funny enough, those are actually easier than the high school classes.
Yeah, I found actually college classes, community college level, easier than high school. Didn't have to grunt and strain. But tell me about the courses you are taking.
Well, we're ending the semester now, but for right now, I've taken 2 English classes. I finished 2 English classes in 1 semester, and that should get me out of high school, and so I'm happy about that. And it was dual credit, so I get high school credit as well as college credit for it.
Okay, now you actually have a fascination for the English language?
Well, I grew up not speaking English so well since I'm from South Africa, so
Okay.
I'm trying to get my English better now, so hopefully I could write more books and do more radio interviews.
You know, I was listening to a review yesterday on National Public Radio, one of the afternoon talk shows where it probably comes out of Germany. But they were talking about the unique style of writers writing material in a language other than their native tongue. Of course, there's not much difference between South African and American English, but some.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, what do you plan to write about?
Right now, I'm writing 3 nonfiction books, and I'm just about to publish my 6th book. It is a novel.
Are you gonna publish a novel?
Yes, sir.
Why the change?
I like to. I'm very complicated. I like to write about many things because I find that a lot of things interest me. The nonfiction books I'm writing about are about archaeology and spirituality, and the fiction books I'm writing about is science fiction. And even though they're very diverse in all of them, in the end, for some reason, I just have this fascination with all these weird subjects that you wouldn't associate with your average high schooler.
Well, is your novel in the same genre of archaeology and spirituality?
It's more in an amount of philosophy. If you wanted to press it, there could be. There are some ideas that go back to archaeology. It's going to be a 2-part book, and in the book, these aliens crash down on a planet, and there's two factions, ones that want to go back to their home planet, ones that think that the gods sent them there to stay there. And so the ones that the gods believe, or the ones that believe that the gods kept them there, they're going to try and create spawn. And in the future, in the second book, which I'm going to plan on writing this summer, when the aliens who do get off the planet come back, it's going to be something similar to what I believe happened on Earth, which is ancient religions were created from dealings with extraterrestrials rather than actual religion.
Really? Tell us about where you come to the conclusion that extraterrestrial influence on ancient religions, because those are pretty diverse.
I do believe so. Up until the age of 15, I was a major Christian. I had lost many friends because they all told me that Christianity was a load of hoopla. And I was one of the same kind of Christians that you would associate where if it's not the Bible, then it's not real. And heaven and hell, going around judging people. Until I started watching these videos online of a very famous ancient astronaut person. His name is Jason Martell, and he every now and then gives an interview to random people or to random audiences, and somebody will catch it on a camcorder. And so I started watching his interviews, and there's multiple ones on YouTube. And I started watching them, and I was very intrigued by them. And I took them to the ideas to one of my teachers at school, and she said, "Oh, it's just a bunch of nonsense." She gave me the whole spiel about how there's not a lot of evidence to support it, etc., etc. And so I left it alone for about a year. And then I caught this new series, the beginning episode of Ancient Aliens, which actually came out 2 years ago, and it was an hour and a half long, where it discusses the beginning of the ancient astronaut theory, which is the belief that ancient religions were about extraterrestrials. And after watching that, I came up with the decision that maybe there is a bit too much evidence for it, and she wasn't looking too much into it. So I guess I learned from, rather, instead of researching it, I just went to ask her. So I learned a lesson there where I could say, maybe I should have researched it instead of asking her, because I was just basing it on her opinion.
Well, some of that ancient astronaut stuff is getting good play these days on the Hair Streak channel and Historic channel and other outlets. I mean, I'm catching it as I go channel surfing, and I have a tendency to tarry there because some of that sounds pretty convincing. There seems to be a universal fascination in the relics of early societies with the placement and arrangement of the stars and the coming and the going of the seasons, which of course you can tell by reading the heavens. And so those folks are, and it seems to be a little bit more detailed than say, all right, they were looking for when to plant the corn. Certainly you can stare up there and figure out, oh, wait a minute, it's corn planting time, and somebody rings a bell and everybody runs out the field and starts sticking things in the ground. But the detail to which some of those things come. And there also seems to be this fascination for Orion. Have you given any thought to why Orion is the most fascinating things in heaven?
Well, you'll find that there's actually a lot of pointing to the stars in Egypt. The three pyramids, the three great pyramids that are mostly known for Egypt, those point to Orion. The Egyptians had a very big fascination with Orion, but in other parts of the world, there were also places where everybody would look at Sagittarius, and they'd look at Sirius, and they would look at all these places. And I like the working of Graham Hancock, where he in his book Fingerprints of the Gods actually maps all these out and finds out that the reason, or the supposed reason, why everybody is looking at the stars is not to see when to plant corn or crops and everything, but the Earth is actually on a slight wobble that grows larger and grows more in depth every 26,000 years. And by mapping this out, they could find when the next change in Earth was coming, in the next period of Earth. Because every ancient religion believed that there was a great cycle that would take place. And what we would mostly give to the Hindus these days was actually common knowledge for the ancients. So that's why everybody was pointing towards the stars. They mapped out. So when Orion was, or when the Giza pyramids were pointing up to Orion, the Sagittarius ones were pointing up to, pointing down at certain places, like in the Armenian Stonehenge. These caveman people, for some reason, all of a sudden, according to archaeology, just decided to bore holes in rocks and make circles of these giant rocks that all have these points that point to Sagittarius, or Cygnus. Excuse me, Cygnus.
Well, there are a lot of Stonehenges, right? I mean, the one in England kind of sticks out because it's made out of big chunks. But those in Northern Europe and in, I think you mentioned Armenia, which is like a half a world away today, much less in that era, because we were supposed to be pretty primitive in that era. But they seem to take the same form, and they seem to be aimed at the same areas of the heavens.
First, I want to correct myself. It wasn't Sagittarius, it was Cygnus, sorry. The interesting thing is that no matter what continent you go to, you will find the same symbols in their religion, in their stone carvings, in everything. Usually what you will do is you'll find spirals. Now, everybody was fascinated with spirals. In Ireland, you have spirals. In England, you have spirals. Those are very famous spirals. There's actually a book called Magic Stones, where this guy spent 2 years going around Europe and just photographing all these magic stones and dolmens. Dolmens being these large rocks hoisted on other rocks, also known as giants' graves. And these large structures. And remember, according to archaeologists, these were just Stone Age people just messing around. And you see in every ancient culture, from the Incas also, they have the spirals. The Native Americans, they have the spirals. The Chinese. And the thing that puts them all together is that they all have pyramids. And the thing that really struck gold for me was they all have these legends upon legends, and a lot of times even petroglyphs and depictions of flying vehicles and their gods coming down from the sky in flying vehicles. I think that's more than just a little bit of coincidence.
Have you looked into it all, the Mississippian culture and the great earthworks in the Mississippi Valley and River? I mean, I made a special tour over there, 20 years ago, just to go from earthworks to earthworks, and some pretty massive stuff out there.
There's crazy stuff out there. There really is. I remember reading a Hans Holzer book. Hans Holzer is usually known for his paranormal studies, but he also got his degree in archaeology and or history. And the interesting thing is he actually came to America and he started photographing all these Stonehenges that actually match the ones from the Viking times and the European times and all those. And so, and the interesting thing is that he was doing a study of Acadia, and he found that the king's first name was the ruler of the 4 regions. But in the Middle East, there's no such thing as 4 regions. You know, you say 4 regions, everybody scratches their head. But across the sea, in the Mayans and all that kind of stuff, in Peru, the Peruvians, their name for their territory was the 4 kingdoms. So, you know, archaeologists believe that everybody has just been separated for thousands of years. But as Thor Heyerdahl shows in his books, everybody was connected together. And it's the interesting things that they tell that you can actually start to match up with extraterrestrials in archaeology. And there's actually a lot of places where archaeologists today find as a very knee-jerk reaction when you talk about it, because it's things that they don't fully understand.
I once was stranded on the Bahamas with Margaret Mead, the great sociologist, and we were running barefoot down the beach, and I thought, well, here's my opportunity. So I asked her, what about pre-Columbian American civilizations? And she told me the Spanish were so thorough at destroying all of the evidence of what those cultures have